For us designers, there is little more debilitating than the blank page. When we're dealing with the idea of designing for emotion, how would we find a hook that we could use that would lead us towards something that's going to be emotionally relevant for our audience? Let me show you a quick exercise. This is called an emotion pattern exercise. There's really 4 stages in this exercise. We start off with the audience. How do they feel now? How do you want them to feel? What triggers this in real life? And then what patterns do you see? So I thought I'd take you through a really quick exercise and give you an example, all right? So let's say, for instance, our product is trucks, and we have our audience already dictated, right? So we understand who our audience is. So when we start with the idea of how they feel now, what we're really getting into are what are their motivations now emotionally. And really there's 2 great motivations for all humans. We are driven by what we love, and we try to alleviate what we fear. So let's just fill it out right now. Okay, so that's a good list. All right, we have our loves. Now, let's hit our fears. All right, that's a good list too. We're now getting a really good picture of who our audience is. So now, how do we want them to feel? Now, I've already sort of pre-filled this in. We know as a motivating factor from research that this particular audience is driven by the idea of pride. So if we know that that's our sort of goal emotion, we now have to ask ourselves, what triggers this emotion in real life? Let's list this out. These are the things that make them proud. Let's start to look for some patterns here. And what we're really looking for are things that we can start to group together and do what I call coming up the ladder. It's going this one and this one and this one. They all have to do with this type of idea. What you're attempting to begin to do is find your hooks. So the first thing I start to see is that this particular audience is relational. We also see with this particular audience that there's a little bit of insecurity that exists here, right? Which isn't unnatural for this particular audience. And then the last thing that I'm beginning to see, and there's a couple of markers, a couple of flags, you're beginning to see nostalgia play into it, this desire for the good old days. And that becomes a really interesting piece to this, right? So it's no longer that you have to design something for trucks. At the beginning of this, before we started anything, you would just be designing an ad for a truck to that audience, and you can do anything. Now you're designing an ad for a truck around nostalgia, and now that's at least a handle to grab a hold from and generate continued ideas. So the next time you're looking for something to give you that hook, that handle, that one step forward in your ideation towards something that's going to be emotionally relevant in your audience, try the emotion pattern exercise and see where it takes you from an ideation standpoint.